This is the CreaseCast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the CreaseCast. It is just me today. Aren't you unlucky? Cody is off today because he is covering the Utica Comets' first game of the regular season. They were playing the Rochester Americans today, and I believe they won that game. So you can tell Cody is excited probably to go cover a team that's actually winning. You should go, and you should definitely go check out his game recap, which will be up by the time this podcast is uploaded. You should go check it out at thecometsharvest.com if you can. But yeah, it's just me today, and it's too bad because today, in the last few days for the Vancouver Canucks have been just an absolute shit show. I'm sorry to swear right at the top here, but oh my god, has it been just awful. Every time we think that it can't possibly get any worse, it gets so much worse. And I'm not even just talking about the fact that the Canucks got absolutely destroyed 7-3 by the Toronto Maple Leafs on Thursday. I'm talking about just everything surrounding it, just the whole mess. It's been an absolute mess. Nonetheless, I do have an infinity blocker to hand out today. If you did not listen to the last episode, the Infinity Blocker is our version of the Infinity Gauntlet from the Marvel movies. It is the who was the best. It's our version of the player of the game who did the best for his team despite all the circumstances. And this episode, I'm giving it to Tanner Pearson. If I have to give it to a Canuck, it's Tanner Pearson. Why? He scored the first goal of the game. It was a very greasy goal. He just whacked at the puck a couple times, got past Freddie Anderson. Some woman on Canucks Twitter predicted that would be the first goal of the game, which is even weirder. Maybe she should have gotten the Infinity Blocker today. He is one of the only players to have a non-negative plus-minus on the Canucks during that game. Is plus-minus a good stat? No. Is it still kind of telling if you're one of the only players on the team that does not have a -1 in a specific game? Yeah, I think so. And he had 5 shots on goal, which was 5 out of the Canucks' 19 in that game against Toronto, which was 26.3% of all shots. Over a quarter of the Canucks' shots were off the stick of Tanner Pearson. Tanner Pearson was all right. He had an okay game, despite literally everything else that went wrong for the Canucks yesterday in the last few days. He did all right. He did all right, and that's why he gets the Infinity Blocker today. I don't even know where to begin here. This has been a mess of a day. Again, I am so sad Cody's not here to talk about this today because there's a lot to talk about. And I don't really even know where to begin. The game almost feels secondary. It doesn't feel like the most important story that's come out of the last couple days. But nonetheless, I will start there because it's indicative of why everything else is so bad. I mean, the Canucks were completely outclassed, outmatched in every single possible angle yesterday. It looked like they might do okay in the first period. It looked like they were doing all right for a while. They held their in. It was only 2-1 Toronto after the first period. Admittedly, I was not able to watch the first 2 periods of the game yesterday because I was at work. I was running a couple errands. Just the Eastern start doesn't necessarily work with my schedule Monday to Thursday, so I wasn't able to get to it until last night. I only watched the replay last night of the first 2. And the Canucks seemed like they were doing okay. For the first part of the game, they looked like they might be okay. They had their moments. They got the hard-working goal in front of the net for Tanner Pearson. That I believe that was the Horvat-Hoglander line out there at the time. Or Pettersson was out there, my bad. Pettersson was out there with Hoglander and Pearson because they split up the Lotto line. They were getting their opportunities, for sure. They got their opportunities. They looked like they were going to hang in there. There were a couple breaks that didn't go their way. The first goal was maybe something Thatcher Demko would want to have back from Austin Matthews, but salvageable. There was a salvageable game in there. And then the second period happened, and just everything went went badly very, very quick. They, again, for the first little while, it felt like they might hold in there. They gave up the very early goal to Austin Matthews again in the second period, but Bo Horvat tied it up seconds after to make it 3-2. It's a 1-goal game. Very much could swing in the Canucks' favor. And then the bottom fell out. You had Jason Spezza getting his second goal of the game, John Tavares scoring. The mounting frustration was palpable. You could see the Canucks slowly just evaporating. Nothing going well. Just a lot of missed assignments. Everything was going against them. And they couldn't recover. And they just couldn't recover. It looked like a team that was completely lost its way. They were completely outclassed by a team that's much better than they are. There's nothing I can say that doesn't tell you the full story, which is that the Leafs are better than the Canucks right now. Very clearly. It's a very obvious step. And I talked about that on the last episode, how there seems to be a canyon between a team like the Canucks and a team like, say, the Canadiens or the Leafs. And that was very well proven. They didn't help themselves out, that's for darn sure. I mean, they only had 20 shots. They had less than 20 shots. They had 19, which is worse. Which is one shot worse, but it still matters. Whereas the Leafs had nearly 40. They had 37 on the night, which is way too many to be giving up. The defense just getting completely overwhelmed. And completely getting busted wide open by a Toronto team with a just stacked offense. They have everything going for them. I mean, Jason Spezza scored a hat trick last night, guys. He makes $700,000. He is a fourth-line player for the Leafs. And he scored a hat trick. I don't really know what better way to describe that, to really tell you how badly this team has been besides that stat. That they gave up 3 goals to Jason Spezza. And fun fact, it is not 2007 right now. It's 2021. And they were completely outclassed in those last 2 periods, and it showed. They were not ready to hang with Toronto, and yet they have 2 more games against the Leafs in the coming days. And they're going to have to find a way to deal with it. JT Miller got off the schneid a little bit. He had a couple points. I believe he had a goal in the third period. And it was a very classic JT Miller goal, just a beautiful hard shot right past Freddie Anderson. He found his groove, but again, there was still something's wrong. Something is still clearly wrong there. I mean, the frustration is obvious. A lot of people were talking about it last night, how he has just not looked the same. He has not looked like the player he did last season. He seems to be getting points, but something about the way he's handling the fact that he's struggling, and his body language, the way he's dealing with assignments near the front of the net, is completely different from last year. Years where he would be normally just hounding a guy in front of the net or right on his man. He looks lost. He looks like he's not trying. And it's getting to a point where people are wondering if he should have been benched, if he should be benched. Cody talked about it in the last episode. If this team were a little bit more stacked offensively, had more options at its disposal, JT Miller might have been scratched, or he might have been sent to demoted to fourth line duty, only playing a few minutes a night, based on the way he's been handling the issues in his game of late. He definitely can't be on this team because they don't have the horses for that. They need JT Miller to get going. They need everybody in that top 6 going, and they need to give them as much ice time as possible because they know if they're not getting it, no one is. And that is inherently the problem here. And yet, here's the weird thing. And this is the part that I kind of didn't realize until someone pointed it out on Twitter yesterday. Lots of the Canucks are playing near a point per game right now, which seems crazy given the circumstances, given the way they are, given the way they're playing. A lot of Canucks right now are scoring at close to a point per game. Elias Pettersson has definitely struggled. I mean, the frustration has been obvious with him, especially yesterday. I believe he would have had a penalty on the play early in the second period where Austin Matthews scored that got canceled out because of the goal. And then I also noticed on the replay of that as well, he just cross-checked Mitch Marner into the boards. Like, nowhere near the net. He's not near the net. He's behind the boards, like a completely late cross-check while the play is going on nearby. He's not in the play at all. He's just taking his frustration out on Marner. And that's very telling, because Pettersson's a guy who doesn't let guys get his goat very often. And to see him doing that while a scoring chance is happening is extremely telling of where this team's mindset is at right now. When your best player is completely out of the play, taking a more or less a cheap shot at a player, at an opponent, is telling that this team is completely not here. They're not in the right mindset. And yet, there are 4 players right now who are playing close to a point per game. I mean, Quinn Hughes is over it. Quinn Hughes is over that mark right now. He has 15 points in 14 games. He is the leading point getter in the NHL among defensemen. He's 6th in NHL scoring, I believe, right now. You can go, and that might have changed since the last time you were, since you were here. He's tied. He's tied with a number of players, but the NHL has him listed 6th, so he's listed in the top 5. He's technically tied for 5th right now with 15 points, most of any defenseman, 2 ahead of Jeff Petrie. For most points by a defenseman. Which is shocking when you consider what's been going on. Brock Besser has 13 points in 14 games. JT Miller, for all of the stuff and all the issues we've been talking about with JT Miller over the course of this season, he still has 13 points in 11 games. Which is baffling. It makes no sense the way we've been talking about him, right? Bo Horvat has 12 points in 14 games. He's still below the mark, but he's very close. Which begs the question, why are we here? Why are we talking about this right now? Why does everything feel so messed up? Why does this entire team feel like a lost cause? How is it possible that their players are scoring at their top players are still scoring at such a great clip, and yet they cannot string more than a few wins together? They have 6 wins and 8 losses, but they've looked a lot worse in those losses. And unfortunately, unfortunately, I don't think there's any way you could put it other than we're no longer talking about a good team that's struggling. It doesn't seem like it anymore. We're not talking about a good team that's struggling. We seem to be talking about a team that isn't good. That just simply isn't good. And I hate to put it that bluntly, but it's the truth. This is not a good hockey team. This is a mediocre hockey team at best, a bad hockey team by most people's standards. And that goes all the way up to management right now. That goes up to there's a lot of people to put the blame on that deserve some blame right now. And nobody more bigger to put the blame on than Jim Benning right now. And this is the wider issue that's been going on with this Canucks team right now. This happened on I believe this was on the 4th. This was yesterday. Wow, this was yesterday. It feels like an eternity ago. Good Lord. Yesterday, an article came out by Ben Kuzma of the Province with Jim Benning, basically going down to why Tyler Toffoli was not kept. Why the Canucks did not get re-signed Tyler Toffoli. And it's a great question considering how good he's been for the Canadians and how much he has torched them in the last few games. Why is this a problem? Why are we asking about this now? Jim Benning had his quotes asked about it. Was asked about it by Ben Kuzma. It was our intent. This is a quote. It was our intention to try and get him signed, and if we could have had a little more time, we could have tried to work through that, Benning said Wednesday. It got to a point where I know Tyler wanted to come back, and we were trying to figure it out. We kind of ran out of time with him getting offers and one he needed to take. We would have had to have moved money out. He's got 9 goals and 8 against us, and we tried to figure something out with him, but we didn't. Toffoli played 10 games with us in the regular season and scored 6 goals in the playoffs. He played hurt and was supposed to be out there longer, but came back to help the team. And these are the... I'm trying to find the quote, the other quote here, but the main quote was, if we could have had a little more time, we could have tried to work through that. A little more time. Think about that for a second. He's talking about a player who he acquired in February, who he let go in October. That's 7 months. My math might be off there. But that's 8 months. 8 months. 8 months to figure out what to do with Tyler Toffoli. What to do about re-signing Tyler Toffoli. And he didn't do it. He let him walk. And right now, they're very much hurting. With more depth offensively. And more depth in general. And he let Tyler Toffoli walk and said, if we had more time. So let's call a spade here. Saying that, making the excuse of you didn't have enough time to re-sign Tyler Toffoli is complete crap. That's a crap answer to that question. You could say, there is so many other things you could say. You could say, we felt we had the pieces in the room and we had to save that money for other purposes, or what have you. There are so many other excuses that you could make. To say you didn't have enough time is crap. Is beyond crap. Good general managers know that if a player is worth it, which Tyler Toffoli clearly was based on how well he played for the Canucks in the regular season, in the shortened season, and in the playoffs, was clearly worth it. General managers know to just make that deal now and figure out how to move money out after. You give the handshake agreement and you make it work. The Vegas Golden Knights, this is the example I gave on Twitter. They gave Alex Pietrangelo $8.8 million. They made that offer despite having 0 available to them. Because it didn't matter. Because they knew that if they got him, it would make them a better team. And that once they had the agreement down, they would find the cap space to do it. The Canucks very well could have found the cap space to do it. That might have meant making a trade that's not beneficial to you. Or, maybe you have to part with some draft picks that you were not anticipating because you need to move out guys like Tyler Myers making $6 million a year, Louis Eriksson making $6 million a year, Brandon Sutter making 5, I believe, or 4, something stupid. Like, all of the players that you could have moved, you could have dealt with. You very easily could have dealt with this. But they didn't. Because for 2 reasons. Either A, Jim Benning never wanted to keep Tyler Toffoli, and he was just bringing him in so the Canucks would make the playoffs and he could keep his job. Or, number 2, they didn't try hard enough. It's so baffling that we have to talk about this. That we still have to talk about this. This is a management team that has completely dropped the ball numerous times. This free agency in particular. And again, I say that as somebody who felt the Canucks made the right decision moving on from Chris Tanev and Jacob Markstrom in particular. Moving on from them felt like the right thing to do. But a lot of stuff we've talked about, a lot of stuff that's come out, especially regarding those situations, has been abysmal and just such a bad look on this management team. Specifically, Rick Dhaliwal talking about how both Chris Tanev and Troy Stecher felt completely slighted by the organization and that there was 0 communication on their part and that they felt completely like they were never that the team was never that interested in bringing them back to begin with and that they were an afterthought. Tyler Toffoli made similar claim, had a similar conversation where he felt like he wanted to come back, but management wasn't actually all that interested in it. And you couple that with the fact that the Canucks management group at the same time, Jim Benning and his management team, were working very diligently hard to try and get Oliver Ekman-Larsson to come to Vancouver, to make an Oliver Ekman-Larsson trade happen, which is, thank God for them that didn't happen. Imagine if the Canucks had made that trade, had pulled the trigger on that trade. What a disaster zone this team would be right now. The team's already a disaster. They were lucky they didn't get that because then it freed them up to take Nate Schmidt, a much better defenseman, objectively a much better defenseman, a few days later, as direct fallout from the Pietrangelo signing with the Knights. This Canucks team is built poorly because this team has no idea how to manage itself. This management team, Jim Benning, has not managed a good hockey team. This is a poorly built team. And we are seeing the fruits of that right now as the team completely just falls apart. Is just falling apart all around them. All of the holes in this team, in this group, are being exposed by better hockey teams. I mean, just looking at the lineup from yesterday. The amount of players, you know how many players, like, we talk all the time about Jim Benning's draft acumen and how great he is as a drafter at bringing in prospects and everything. Out of all of Jim Benning's draft picks in the last 7 years, Jim Benning has been here 7 years. You know how many Jim Benning draft picks were in the lineup against Toronto last night? There was Besser, Pettersson, Höglander, Gaudette, Virtanen, Hughes, I don't know why I said Schmidt, and Demko. 6. 6 in 7 years. Jalen Chatfield was a signing. He was just a signing out of like an overager signing out of junior. Usually Zach McEwen's in the lineup, same deal. Tyler Mott was a trade pickup from the Thomas Vanek trade. Out of the actual draft picks that Jim Benning's management group has made in the last 7 years, only 6 are in the lineup right now. And think about how bad the Canucks have been. How many draft picks the Canucks have gone through in the last 7 years, and high draft picks. And they only have 6 players? 6 players. Do I have that right? I might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 7. Sorry, 7. Oh, 7 players in 7 years. That's a terrible batting average, especially when you consider that most of those are first rounders that you should always hit on. That you should always land on those players. When you take out the players that weren't first round picks, that leaves just Gaudette and Höglander. And Demko as well. Demko in a second round pick. A very high second round pick, might I add, which, by the way, frankly, actually, that shouldn't even count, because technically Demko is a 32nd overall pick, which today would be when Seattle comes in next year, will be a first round pick. So he frankly shouldn't count. We're gonna say it's just Gaudette and Höglander. Those are the only 2 players in this lineup right now that were drafted out of the first round that are on this team right now. That's embarrassing. That's nothing short of embarrassing. This team is a mess. Yesterday, it also came out that the Canucks do not have the assets to acquire Sam Bennett, which is, again, crazy to think about. And yes, I get some people were like, well, what about Pettersson and Besser? You could trade one of them. They would take that for Sam Bennett. It's like, well, obviously they're not going to do that. You understand that's not what they're going to do here. So, in terms of actual reasonable resources to acquire a Sam Bennett, a guy who can't even make his own team, who's a healthy scratch, the Canucks apparently do not have the pieces to do that despite how bad they've been over the last 7 years. They have had 2 good years under Jim Benning. One of those was mostly Mike Gillis people on the team. The other was last year. This team is a mess. This team is a huge, colossal mess. And frankly, I do not see a situation, a good situation, where Jim Benning is still here by the end of this month. There's no way. There's just no way. Unless the team goes on an absolute tear and starts playing out of their mind again, there is no way he's still here at the end of the month. I would be shocked if he was still here at the end of the month. This is the fruits of they're reaping what they've sown right now, which is a not good hockey team, a team with no depth whatsoever. getting caved in by good teams, by well-built teams like Montreal and Toronto. This is not a good hockey team. And you have to hope that some new general manager will come in and fix things and turn the ship around. It won't be this year, but next year maybe. I mean, one of the best examples I can give you here is that one of the most optimistic things I can examples I can give you is that in 2008, the Canucks missed the playoffs under general manager Dave Notice after, adding Roberto Luongo the season before and making the playoffs and winning their division. They underperformed, or they kind of performed more to expectations in year 2 and missed the playoffs in 2008. Notice was fired by Francesco Aquilini who at the time was a relatively new owner of the Canucks at the time, and replaced him with Mike Gillis. That team then went on to become one of the best teams in the NHL, one of the premier franchises in the NHL for 5 years. After missing the playoffs. That's not bad. This could be a good thing. There's very real reason to believe that an off year like this could be a good thing for the Canucks. A lot of people talking about the frustration and how mad they are at how bad this team is. And there's no way out for this year, unfortunately. There is simply no way out. We're all just going to have to ride it out. And I hate that I have to be so glib about it. But that's just the way it is right now. This team isn't very good. And you hope that they can maybe turn things around. But right now, that's just not going to happen. This team's just not that good. Their best players, more or less, with the exception of Elias Pettersson, who's been struggling, have been somehow still pulling their weight. But the rest of the lineup isn't. And that's just because they're not capable to do so anymore. This is not a good situation. The Canucks are stuck between a rock and a hard place. They kind of just have to weather the storm. And you hope that ownership looks at this team and says, well, this is a poorly built franchise and we need to make changes. And that starts at the top. There is no way that Jim Benning should expect to be here by the end of the year. He shouldn't. He just shouldn't. Unless this team goes on a magic turnaround, I don't see a good situation where he's still here. And with that, let's take some questions. We have two questions. This has been sad. I'm sad right now. Are you sad? I'm so sorry. I will try and think of something more fun to bring us out with here. But for now, let's answer a couple listener questions. We have 2 listener questions, both from Sully Larson at Sullivan J Larson on Twitter. The first question is, Lach, are you available to play D tomorrow night in Toronto? Now, I'll be honest here, Sully. Defense is not my bag. I'm flattered that you think of me first. But I am not a defenseman, unfortunately. Defenseman has never been my strong suit. Especially with what the Canucks need right now. I mean, the Canucks' biggest problem, what is it? It's the fact that they're not good in their own zone. I am admittedly a defenseman that likes to, on the few times that I played defenseman, which I believe I can count on one hand, I very much like to chase the puck. I am very much a Quinn Hughes type of player minus the actual skill that likes to chase the puck and try and score goals. I'm usually a winger when I'm skating out if I'm not playing goal. So I will say that quite honestly, as bad as this Canucks defense has been, I would not be an upgrade, unfortunately. If you want me to play third line wing, I could do that, or fourth line wing. Yeah, maybe I could be an upgrade there, or in net. For sure, I'm an okay goalie. I'm a pretty good goalie. I don't think I'd be better than Braden Holtby or Thatcher Demko, but I'd be an okay goalie. If you want me to put me on wing for the Canucks, sure, I can help you there. Defense will not help you because I'm very much the type of defenseman that would go, if somebody gave me the puck behind the net, it's like, all right, time for the breakout. My immediate thought would be, cool, I'm going to go try and solo dash through all 5 players and get a breakaway, even though I do not have the foot speed or the skill to make that happen. So, unfortunately, I am available. If the Canucks do want to throw me in there for just something interesting, to try something new, sure, okay. I'll give it a go. I just don't think I'll be an upgrade. And then he asks, Sully asks, okay, for my real question here, if Vancouver plays this poorly through the next 2 games and into the Calgary series, what's the first domino to fall? Is it Travis Green? That's a great question. I think this could go one of 2 ways. I've talked about, I already said I don't think that Jim Benning makes it to the end of the month. I think there are, I don't know if it's that quick, if the axe falls that quickly. It very well could. People are mad. People are mad enough that the dominoes could fall that quickly. I would say there are two possible outcomes here when it comes to if somebody gets fired. If Travis Green is the first one to get fired, it means ownership has not learned anything, does not understand what the problem is. Has Travis Green been coaching particularly well lately? I'd say no. It hasn't been great. But also look what the hand he's been dealt. It's not a great team. It's not a good team. I don't know if you brought back prime coaching Scotty Bowman out of a time machine to coach this team, that he could fix it. I don't know if you brought back Alain Vigneault in 2011 back, if he could fix this group. All the best coaches of Canucks history and NHL history, I don't think any one of them could fix this lineup and make them a winner. So if Travis Green is the first one to get fired, it means that ownership, because again, reminder, how it works is Jim Benning has to go to ownership and say, hey, we need to fire the coach. And I talked about this before, that if he tries and does that, he'd just be sharpening the knife for his own axe. But say if ownership listened to him and fired Travis Green, it means they've learned nothing. It means they have not learned and do not understand what the real problem is here. Coaching is not the problem here. Coaching hasn't been great, but it's far from the issue. The issue is with a poorly built team. And that goes to manage. And that is on Jim Benning. Entirely solely on Jim Benning. And the way that he has handed out contracts and has built this franchise over the last 7 years. So, I will say, no, I don't think Travis Green's going to get fired. I think that, if they play as badly as they have over the last few games into the and they keep doing it for the rest of the Toronto series, I could see that, yes. I could absolutely see Benning getting the axe then. Again, nobody's going to come in and fix it. There is no matter who you bring in to replace Jim Benning, none of them are going to come in and fix that team and make them better make them better in time for the playoffs this year. But at the very least, you'll be saying, okay, we believe that this team cannot be fixed by this group and by this management team, and we need somebody else to try and do it. Especially because again, you do not want to give Jim Benning. If you're already planning to fire Jim Benning, you do not want to have him still in charge of the team when the trade deadline comes around, because that would be a massive mistake. So you hope that if ownership understands what's wrong with the team, that they give Jim Benning the axe first, and then let the next GM decide what they want to do with Travis Green. I think Travis Green deserves a shot to stay with a decent team, especially how well he coached the team during the playoffs last year. But we will see. I don't think Green will be the first to go unless ownership is making a terrible, terrible mistake and extremely poorly understanding what's actually wrong with the hockey team. And yeah, I don't really know much else there is to say. I knew this was going to be a short episode, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should mention before we close this episode out. Because it's been such a bad. This week has felt like a month long, is it not? I'm wearing my Bunch of Jerks Carolina Hurricanes t-shirt because this is now a Hurricanes podcast in reality. Although I don't think they played because of COVID precautions. That's another thing that's worth talking about is the COVID issues and how they're now definitely spreading from team to team. The one good thing about the North Division that's been going well for everybody is that nobody's been getting sick, which is great. There were a couple early scares, but overall, they seem to have kept it out. They've seemed to have kept it out. Nobody, aside from Pierre-Luc Dubois, was on the COVID protocol list, and that was only because he was coming from Columbus via trade. I believe he will be making his first appearance on Tuesday, playing his first game on Tuesday. Aside from that, no players are out sick right now, which is great for the Canadian division. The American divisions, on the other hand, have been a huge mess with COVID. It has been very clearly shown that it is now spreading by from team to team. The Devils definitely made the Sabres sick, and the Sabres are pissed about that. The Avalanche have have had games postponed because of positive COVID tests on their side. And that definitely came from playing the Minnesota Wild, who had their games shut down earlier in the week. This is a problem. Again, should hockey be... Again, I've talked about this before. Hockey probably shouldn't be playing right now. I don't think that's a secret. But they were going to make them play anyway, unfortunately. And this is the end result. This was bound to happen. I do think that once they really get into the stretch of the year, that they should be fine. But right now, the amount of games that are postponing are piling up for the NHL. The amount of teams that are having to postpone games is going up and up and up and up. And you have to wonder if they're going to make it to the end of the year. They might not. They might have to stop early on. I mean, we saw the poor NWHL. They had to end their season early due to what was apparently, from what I heard, was not a bubble whatsoever. They said it was a bubble, but it very clearly wasn't. Nearly every team got sick and sent home. Some teams opted out, and they completely suspended the year. So that was a huge disaster for the NWHL. I feel so bad because I really liked watching the women's hockey games. And I hope the PHWPA barnstorming games do better in terms of keeping the players healthy and safe than the NWHL did. But from the NHL standpoint, they've started making a few changes. Like now the glass is gone behind the benches, I guess, to let more airflow through, which I don't think will do much. But sure, if it gives the coaches a bit more room to stand like a couple feet back from the players, why not, I guess, give it a try. Although one very funny thing, well, I say funny in a not good way, that came out of all that was the Florida Panthers said they couldn't because they had expensive season ticket holders sitting behind those benches, so they couldn't take that glass out, which is the Florida Panthers basically a way of saying that, hey, we don't care about getting our players sick, we care about money, because because that's what this is. They're playing for money reasons. They're not playing because it's actually safe to right now, unfortunately. Hopefully they take the glass out and they adhere to those conditions. Because, yeah, lots of people in the States are getting sick, and the States have done a very poor job at handling this whole thing, and handling the pandemic. You're at risk nearly every single time you walk out your door of getting COVID. Doesn't matter how safe you are. If you have a job and have to go work a job, you're at huge risk in the States. In Canada, it's much safer. We are doing a lot better. It's not great. BC has still had a lot of issues of late with COVID numbers, but they pale in comparison to what the US has been dealing with. This and Canadian players are more or less players in Canada have been a lot safer and a lot more able to move around freely without worrying that they're going to get sick every time they go somewhere, because people are taking it more seriously here. And you hope that it doesn't come down to canceling games, but we canceling games outright and going with a shortened points percentage season, but we shall see. And if it's points percentage, the Canucks are not in favor. This does not help the Canucks in any way. They are in a lot of because right now they're in a lot of trouble. They're at only a 429, I believe, right now. Yeah, 429. It's the second lowest in the division behind only Ottawa. They have more points than the Flames, but the Flames have played 14 less games. Not great. It's not been a good run here. I'm trying to think if there's any other things I want to touch on before we get out of here. I really don't think so. This team is struggling. This team is not good. This is not a good hockey team. You hope that the Canucks can maybe come out and surprise with a few wins on the weekend. I mean, you have Hockey Night in Canada, the nationally televised game, Saturday night. If they come out with a lackluster performance like they have the last few games, all hell is going to break loose. I mean, all hell is already kind of broken loose. It's not been a good run for sure. I mean, those 4 games, you really hoped that they were going to, those 4 wins in a row, you really hoped the momentum was going to swing in their favor. But right now, all that's left to do is just march to the end, which is it's so dark and damning to be talking about. What are we, 14 games into the season? Is there anything good I can finish up on here? I mean, Tyler Mott's looked very good. I've liked what I've seen from Tyler Mott. Antoine Roussel as well. Both of them have looked really good. Depth-wise, they've been all right. Niels Höglander continues to be an absolute menace around the net. He's been great. Thatcher Demko is getting absolutely no help from his defensemen and done okay. The last game was, I would not call his best work, but it was no one's best work for that matter. And I don't feel like there's much else to say. I feel like this is all that needs to be said right now with everything going on in terms of where this franchise is at. And we'll see where they get to in the next few games. By the time we next do a show, Cody will be back for that episode on Tuesday. The Canucks will have played 2 more games against the Leafs, and we'll be heading into a 3-game homestand against Calgary on the Thursday. And a lot can change. A lot might change about this team and the way it looks at the top and on the ice, possibly, in the next 3 days. We shall see. I hope things get better for everybody's sake, not just for me, because I've been miserable watching these games. They've made me incredibly sad. I hope for everyone's sake, and I hope that this team finds a way to get its act together. Because nobody wants to watch this. Not again. We've already went through all the Willie Desjardins years, all the bad tanking for pick years. I thought we were done with this. I really did. I hope we are. I hope this team finds a way to get back to where it belongs. And that is it for this much shorter episode of the CreaseCast. Thank you for listening. When it's just me doing the show on my own. If you enjoyed it, and all the other episodes we do, please check out the CreaseCast Patreon for only $5 a month. That's less than a nice Starbucks latte per month. You get bonus episodes of the CreaseCast every month. You get early access to some of my articles on lachinthecrease.com. And access to the Lach in the Crease Discord channel and more on the way. Make sure you check out my website at lachinthecrease.com where I write articles like the North Division Power Rankings every single Sunday. Make sure you subscribe to this to the show on all of your whatever podcast platform you use, as well as our YouTube channel where you can watch me have existential crises while talking about the Canucks. Make sure to give us a review on Apple Podcasts. What else is there? Make sure to visit Cody's website at comicsharvest.com and follow Cody on Twitter at Cody Sievertson. He just passed 900 followers. Hell yeah, he's getting close to 1,000. I am not close to 400, but if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I would like to get to 400 before the end of the season. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach in the Crease. And that is it for this episode. Thank you for listening. This has been the CreaseCast. Cody will be back on Tuesday. Hopefully to talk about changes for the better. As this Vancouver Canucks team marches forward with 2 more games against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Thank you so much for listening. Good night.